Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Sinkhole. This movie tells the story of a working-class family moving into a new apartment purchased after 11 years of hard work. They throw a housewarming party to show his co-workers when overnight a heavy downpour creates an extremely deep sinkhole that engulfs the entire building. Will they survive the disaster? Let's find out in Sinkhole. Sinkhole begins by showing a man named Jeong-won who has just moved into his new apartment in an apartment complex. Jeong-won is thrilled to move into his new apartment because he has set aside part of his salary to buy the apartment for 11 years. While busy taking care of his moving, he is annoyed by the behavior of his neighbor, a man named Man-soo who parks the car carelessly, making it difficult for the moving house service officer to transport Jeong-won's furniture. After being constrained by various obstacles, finally that night, he moved with his wife, Young-hee, and their son to their new apartment. The following day, Jeong-won's son shows his parents something that indicates that the floor of their apartment is slanted. But Young-hee doesn't really care about that. On the other hand, Jeong-won, still thinking about his son's marbles rolling swiftly as if the floor is sloping, then asks Man-soo about it when they pass each other downstairs. But Man-soo thinks he is making this up. Feeling useless talking to Man-soo, he then went to his office. Arriving at the office, all of Jeong-won's co-workers congratulate him on moving to the new apartment he's been dreaming of. One of his co-workers says that the apartment building he lives in is a former car waste treatment plant. But Jeong-won says that the factory no longer exists. Jeong-won then invites all of his co-workers to a party to celebrate his move to a new apartment. They then agreed to come to his new apartment in the next few days. One night, while Jeong-won and his family are relaxing at home, it rains so hard that it shakes and causes the glass downstairs to crack. Neither Jeong-won nor the other residents notice the shock. The next day, Man-soo is the first to notice the cracked glass. Out of curiosity, he touches the broken glass, and suddenly the glass shatters completely. The neighbors who saw the incident then assume that he was the one who broke the glass. On the other hand, Jeong-won, who is about to go to work, notices the ground around his apartment has cracked quite badly. That night, he gathers the neighbors at his apartment to discuss some irregularities in the foundation of the apartment building. But the neighbors make a fuss about the cigarette smoke from Man-soo's apartment, which annoys the other residents. The scene switches and shows Man-soo having dinner with his son, Seung-tae. Man-soo thinks that his son is secretly smoking behind his back, then asks him to smoke on the roof of the building so that the smoke doesn't bother other residents. But Seung-tae insists on telling his father that he doesn't smoke. The next day, Jeong-won's co-workers visit his apartment to celebrate his move to a new apartment. Jeong-won also invites Man-soo to party with them. It's getting late. One by one his co-workers go home, and only two people are left at his apartment because they are very drunk, a man named Seung-kyun and a woman named Yoon-jo. Man-soo then offers to take the two home, but charges a hefty fee. Seung-kyun and Yoon-jo then decide to stay at Jeong-won's apartment. In the morning, Young-hee and her son, who are on their way home from shopping, call Jeong-won to wake him up. Because the phone doesn't pick up, Jeong-won's son then takes the initiative to run home first and wake his father so that he won't be late for work. On the other hand, Seung-kyun, who got up first, immediately rushed away from Jeong-won's apartment by taking a taxi. However, on the way, Seung-kyun realized that his bag was left at Jeong-won's apartment and finally asked the taxi driver to turn back. Elsewhere, Man-soo, who is walking around the apartment asking each resident about the availability of water in their home, meets Jeong-won's son in front of the elevator. After that, he climbs onto the roof of the building and finds cigarette smoke there. It turns out that Seung-tae is secretly smoking on the roof of the building. He immediately hid when he heard his father coming. On the roof of the building, Man-soo asks an old man for water availability on the roof of the next building. The old man turns on the faucet, then squirts a stream of water at him, and suddenly something bad happens. The apartment building suddenly sank into the ground to a depth of 500 meters. Seung-kyun, who was in the taxi, did not have time to save himself because the taxi fell into the ground, like the residents in the apartment building. Young-hee, who saw the incident from a distance, panics because her husband and son are inside the collapsed building. Jeong-won, who has just woken up, is shocked by the condition of his apartment that has sunk to the ground. Jeong-won then rescues Seung-kyun, who is trapped in the taxi, just before the taxi slides into a deep pit. Yoon-jo, who just woke up, was very surprised by what just happened. Before long, Man-soo finally joins Jeong-won and his companions as the man slides down onto Jeong-won's apartment. The four of them then tried to call for help, but got no signal. Meanwhile, on the surface, the police have secured the place and the SAR team has formed a rescue team that will go down into the hole and evacuates the apartment dwellers trapped in the building. However, another landslide occurred, so all rescue team members decided to return to the top. While arguing with Jeong Man-soo hears a groan that turns out to be Seung-tae. Man-soo is relieved to find that his son is okay. The five of them then thought of another plan to get out of the hole. Meanwhile, Young-hee, who looks devastated by the incident that happened to her husband and son, can only wait for news of the people she loves in uncertainty. Along with Young-hee, she sees a woman waiting to hear about her son who was in the building when the landslide occurred. The two of them could only encourage each other and hope for good news. In the pit, Man-soo and the others gather supplies and groceries needed to survive while waiting for help. They then talked about each other's lives and became closer. Meanwhile, the rescue team flew the drone to see the situation in the hole, but the drone lost its signal when it reached a certain depth. The drone falls and is found by Seung-tae, who orders the people to come. They also tried to give news to the people above by speaking in front of the camera, but suddenly the building shook again and sank deeper. Because the slope of the building is getting sharper, Seung-won, who didn't have time to hold on, was dragged and almost fell to the bottom of the hole. Yoon-jo swiftly throws a rope at Seung-won and tries to pull him away. With the help of Jeong and also Man-soo, Seung-won was finally rescued. However, the rope that Man-soo was holding suddenly broke and caused him to fall into the quicksand. Seeing his father fall, Seung-tae immediately jumps to help him, but he was sucked into the sand. Realizing that the quicksand is pointing downwards, Jeong heads downstairs and breaks the glass to save Man-soo and his son. Meanwhile, the drone signal suddenly reconnected and the object flew upwards. The search and rescue team realized their drone had returned and grabbed the object to view camera footage. It appears on camera that Jeong and Man-soo managed to survive inside the building with Seung-tae and Jeongwon's two co-workers. Young-hee is so relieved that her husband is still alive down there and thinks her son is with him. A woman sitting next to her looks so worried about her family because he doesn't appear in the footage. The SAR team then tracks down Jeongwon's son with Young-hee's cell phone and tells her that her cell phone is in the building. The SAR team then devised a plan to prevent another landslide by using the foundation of the apartment building next to the collapsed building. At first, the residents there refused to demolish their building's foundation. But the old man, who had interacted with Man-soo before, manages to convince them to save the people who are still living down there. Because the weather was cloudy and it was predicted to rain, the rescue team then sent some supplies for the residents who were still surviving in the collapsed building, such as oxygen cylinders, flashlights, groceries, and satellite phones. Jeong then calls his wife using a satellite phone and finds out that his son is not with her. Man-soo, who hears this, is very surprised, because he thought Jeongwon's son had left the apartment building after they met in front of the elevator. On the other hand, Jeongwon's son is seen cowering in fear in the car. With the help of Man-soo and the others, Jeong tries to find his son's whereabouts and begins the search through the elevator. Jeong tries to open the elevator door, but still can't find his son. Meanwhile, the rescue team, which was trying to evacuate residents using cranes, had to postpone the rescue action again because landslides occurred again. As a result of the landslide, Jeong falls to the ground floor and his screams are heard by the child trapped in the car. Jeongwon's son hears a voice nearby and hopes it's his father, but it turns out to be another boy trapped in the building. But the boy doesn't hear Jeongwon's son and leaves immediately. On the other hand, Jeong immediately gets up and looks for his son's whereabouts in the ruins of the building that has begun to be flooded. He finally managed to find his son, but he can't save another boy who is the son of the woman who was with Young-hee up there. Jeong then meets an old woman and invites her to come out of the hole together, but she refuses and chooses to stay with her grandson's body. The hole began to fill with water because it was raining very hard. Carrying his son, Jeong tries to navigate the sides of the intact building so he can return to safety with Man-soo and the others. When he is trapped and can't find another way, he calls his friends for help. In the rain noise, Man-soo hears Jeongwon's screams and rushes to rescue him and his son, while they are now flooded. After everyone is reunited, Man-soo and the others collect items that can float in the water so they don't drown. Not long after, they saw a jumbo-sized water tower floating near them. Man-soo then ordered everyone to enter the water tower. The mood turns sad when Man-soo says goodbye to his son and says he'll stay behind to make sure the tower floats to the surface. Seung-tae bursts into tears because of his father's sacrifice. So far, his relationship with his father has been strained, but deep down, he loves his father very much. The rain fell harder and harder, and in an instant, the water had drowned the place. The water tower they were riding in was blocked by a twisted cable. However, thanks to their solid cooperation, the tower was able to float again. Another problem arose when the tower hit a blunt object that bore a hole in the tower, so that water began to inundate the inside of the tower. Dong-won and the others struggle to get the blunt object out of the torrent until finally Man-soo appears and helps them by kicking the torrent to get the blunt object off. Man-soo apparently still survives using the oxygen cylinder previously sent by the SAR team. After the blunt object was removed, Seung-kyun immediately covered the hole with his own hand. Man-soo still has to swim up to the surface because his grip on Seung-kyun's hand slipped due to the strong current. When Man-soo starts to give up because he's exhausted, a miracle happens when suddenly his leg gets caught in a cable wrapped around the tower, causing him to be carried away by the tower that floats to the surface. Man-soo manages to survive, then opens the cover of the tower and tells Dong-won and the others that they are all safe in the end. The SAR team who saw their appearance immediately carried out the evacuation process to get them out of there. Young-gi looks so happy to be reunited with her husband and son who survived. Seung-tae is also very happy that his father survived and feels proud of his father who kept fighting until the end to save them all. However, not everyone gets his happiness. The woman who is faithfully waiting with Young-gi gets sad news from Dong-won, who says that her son has died along with his grandmother who drowned in the hole. Dong-won apologizes for not being able to save her son. The film ends by showing Seung-kyun and Yoon-jo, who are now living together in a trailer home. The two invite Dong-won's family as well as Man-soo's to celebrate their move to a new house. Seung-kyun said, "It doesn't take years to find happiness, because happiness can be found right now."